In the town of Bethlehem, there lived a young shepherd named David. He was entrusted with tending his father Jesse's sheep. David was the youngest of Jesse's 8 sons. While his 3 elder brothers had enlisted in King Saul's army and were facing the Philistines, David's days were spent in the peaceful hills, watching over the flock. Unlike the other village boys who yearned for warrior glory, David found solace in the quietude of his life. His days were filled with the rhythmic clinking of sheep bells, the melody of his harp weaving through the warm breeze, and the vast open sky as his canvas. He possessed a heart overflowing with courage, a quiet strength honed by the solitude of the hills, and a faith in a higher power that ran deep in his veins. One fateful day, Jesse asked David to bring provisions to his brothers and their commander in the battlefield. David, eager to help and curious about the war, eagerly accepted the task. He arrived at the Israelite camp just in time to witness Goliath's daily challenge. Goliath, a walking mountain of a man, clad in gleaming bronze armor and wielding a spear the thickness of a small tree, had dared the Israelites to send their strongest warrior to single combat. The very air vibrated with the echoes of his booming voice as he threatened to crush the Israelites under his armored foot. For days, Goliath stood across the valley, a menacing silhouette against the setting sun. Panic gripped the Israelite camp. Even King Saul, a once mighty warrior, now a man burdened by years, cowered before the prospect of facing such a colossal foe. Fear, like a thick fog, choked the hearts of even the mightiest soldiers. A fire ignited within him. He couldn't fathom grown men, trained for battle, trembling before a bully. While fear paralyzed everyone else, in David's heart, a fierce determination bloomed. He couldn't tolerate seeing his people live in terror. One evening, as the camp simmered with despair, David approached his eldest brother, Eliab, a seasoned soldier. "Why does everyone cower?" David asked, his voice laced with frustration. Eliab, burdened with his own fear, scoffed at his younger brother's naivety. "A battlefield is no place for a shepherd boy," he reprimanded, dismissing David with a dismissive wave. But David wouldn't be deterred. He stormed into the royal tent, his heart pounding with a mixture of anxiety and resolve. King Saul, a haggard figure slumped on his throne, looked up with surprise at the determined young man. David, with a voice that resonated with surprising authority, declared his intention to fight Goliath. The king and his advisors burst into laughter. Here was a beardless boy, barely reaching Goliath's knees, proposing to face a giant in battle. They scoffed, dismissing David as a delusional shepherd. But David, unwavering in his conviction, recounted a tale. He spoke of how, with only his slingshot and a well-aimed stone, he had once protected his flock from a ferocious lion. He spoke of his unwavering faith in his God, who would never desert those who stood for what was right. A flicker of hope sparked in King Saul's eyes. He saw in David's youthful bravado a reflection of his own lost courage. He saw in David's faith a glimmer of the divine strength that the Israelites so desperately needed. Hesitantly, cautiously, the king gave David permission to face the giant. The news that a shepherd boy would be their champion spread like wildfire through the Israelite camp. Disbelief turned to amusement, amusement to skepticism, and then a sliver of hope began to take root. Here was a chance, however improbable, to break free from the grip of fear. The day of the duel dawned, a crisp morning painted with the hues of battle. Goliath, clad in his imposing armor, swaggered onto the battlefield, his booming voice echoing across the valley. He expected an easy victory, a chance to crush the Israelites' spirit before the fight even began. But as the dust settled, instead of a seasoned warrior, a lone figure emerged from the Israelite ranks. David, his shepherd's staff in one hand and his sling hanging over his shoulder. Goliath was taken aback. He roared with laughter, the sound a terrifying tremor that shook the very ground. He mocked David's audacity, his booming voice belittling the young shepherd. But David, unfazed by the taunts, stood tall. He looked up at the giant, his gaze unwavering. He closed his eyes for a moment, seeking strength from his faith, then reached into his pouch and pulled out 5 smooth stones. Picking a stone, David placed it in his sling. With a practiced motion, he spun around, gathering speed, and let loose. The stone whizzed through the air, a streak of defiance against the Goliath's arrogance. With a sickening thud, the stone found its mark, Goliath's forehead. A stunned silence fell across the battlefield. The mighty Goliath, champion of the Philistines, the giant, staggered and fell, mortally wounded. Seizing the moment, David rushed forward, took Goliath's own sword, and finished the job. A collective gasp escaped the lips of the onlookers. The Israelites, who had moments ago been bracing themselves for defeat, erupted in a cheer. Hope, long dormant, surged through their ranks. The tension that had gripped the battlefield for days finally snapped. The Israelites erupted in a thunderous roar, a wave of jubilation that washed over the valley. David, the shepherd boy, had slain the giant. The Israelites pursued them, achieving a great victory. David took Goliath's head to Jerusalem as a trophy and kept his armor in his tent. News of David's victory spread like wildfire. The Philistine army, demoralized and leaderless, retreated in disarray. Israelites, emboldened by their newfound courage, pursued them, driving them back across the border. David, the unlikely hero, was carried back to the camp on the shoulders of his cheering comrades. King Saul, his face etched with a mixture of relief and awe, welcomed David back. Saul, impressed and curious about David's lineage, asked Abner, the captain of his army, about David's family. When David returned with Goliath's head, Abner presented him to Saul. Saul asked David about his family, and David replied that he was the son of Jesse, the Bethlehemite. He showered him with praise and gifts, but a seed of doubt had been sown in the king's heart. Here was a young shepherd, a symbol of the people's adoration, who had achieved what the king himself could not. A flicker of jealousy, faint at first, began to simmer within Saul. The victory celebration that night was joyous. Songs were sung of David's bravery, and his name was chanted with reverence. David, humbled by the outpouring of affection, strummed his harp, filling the air with a melody of triumph and thanksgiving. He knew that his victory wasn't just his own, but a testament to the unwavering faith that resided within him and the people of Israel. As the fire crackled and the night deepened, David knew his journey was far from over. He had defeated Goliath, but the battles to come would be different, fought not with slingshots and stones, but with the complexities of leadership and the weight of expectation. Yet, as he looked out at the jubilant faces of his people, David felt a surge of confidence. He had faced a giant and emerged victorious. He was ready for whatever challenges the future held. Did you like the story? Please feel free to watch more on our YouTube channel. Like and subscribe. May God bless you.